why didn't you tell us how hard it was? And I said, I didn't want to seem weak. I wanted to seem like I got this. I knew you couldn't come out and help me, and I didn't want to worry you. And so I put on my little happy Allyson mask.
Allyson Schrier is a caregiver turned innovator whose journey began with something deeply personal. Years ago, her husband began showing signs of memory loss, but no one had answers. Allyson went from being a wife and mom to a full-time caregiver, trying to navigate a system that was very broken. But here's what makes her story different. She didn't just live through it. She created something extraordinary because of it. Allyson is the co-founder of Zinnia TV, a groundbreaking streaming platform for people living with dementia and the people who care for them. What started as short videos she made to connect with her husband has grown into something that's changing lives across the country. So if you've ever found yourself holding it all together, caring for somebody else while trying not to lose yourself in the process, this one's for you. And hey, if you want to hear more powerful stories like Allyson's, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Allyson, thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure.
You know, your path from co-founding Zinnia TV and reshaping the way we care for people with memory loss might surprise people who don't know your story, because you didn't start out in healthcare or elder care. Can you tell us a little bit about what led you here and how this is becoming your life's work?
Yeah, thank you for asking me that question. No background in healthcare. My husband was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia when he was 47 years old. My career had been in technology, but then I stepped out of that to raise kids. And when my kids were little, I went back to graduate school, but I studied writing, so I had nothing to do with healthcare. So when my husband was diagnosed, that was a completely new world that opened up for me. Only, it's not like it opens up all at once, right? It's like driving at night with the headlights on. You only see what you see in front of you, and then you go a little further and you see a little bit more. So when he was diagnosed, and I will also add that it took a very long time to get his diagnosis because he was so young, that the people that we were seeing, and also because frontotemporal dementia is somewhat rare. It doesn't behave like Alzheimer's disease, which everybody is much more familiar with. With frontotemporal dementia, there's no memory loss component. There's no wayfinding issues where people are like suddenly getting lost in places that were once familiar. Instead, it's more like a wholesale kind of personality change. And so it's not something that people instantly think of. So anyway, it took a long time to get the diagnosis. Once we had the diagnosis, I recognized pretty early on that I was not really very good at at being this in this new role as a caregiver, and I understood that I had to understand what was going on with him, and so I just started doing lots of research, education. I almost immediately found a support group. I was very, very lucky that one of the members of my writing critique group was living with his wife who had Alzheimer's disease. And he looped me into his support group and shared with me, Allyson, for years now, you've been telling us things about your husband, and I've been wondering, like, God, does he have dementia? And I thought, why didn't you tell me that? But anyway, so I joined a support group right away, and that was instantly a way for me to get lots of education, both about how to do things better and how to do things not so well, right? Because in a support group, people share the things that they do that blew up. And so you get a pretty good sense of like, oh, okay, so I probably shouldn't say that to the person that I support with dementia. I then decided to do a career pivot, and I had to go back to work. My husband had not worked successfully for years, and I'd been a stay-at-home mom. So somebody needed to be bringing home the bacon, as they say. And so I didn't think I was really going to be able to make it as a writer in a way that would like meaningfully support my family. My technology experience was so archaic at that point. I didn't really see myself going back into technology. And so I thought, well, I've learned a lot about how to support a person who's living with dementia. So I started doing workshops at libraries and at churches and community centers for free, just meeting with caregivers, telling them what I knew. And I realized, I enjoy this. I would enjoy getting even more equipped to be able to support other families. I don't want to do one-on-one care. Like I don't want to do that. But I like the idea of teaching people. And so I went back to, I started doing trainings to get some credentials, right? Because it's
Okay.
like, to get a few letters to put after my name or whatever, right? So people believe that I actually know what I'm talking about. So I did all of the, not all of, I did a bunch of certifications with TIPA SNOS organizations. I got certified within Washington State to be able to teach the classes that are mandated for anybody who works in long-term care in Washington State. One needs to take these dementia and mental health specialty classes, full-day classes. And so I learned how to teach those. I taught for 4 years. I then joined the University of Washington, where I helped launch a program that was about education for doctors. And again, helping them like understand what is this thing, dementia, and how do I better detect, diagnose, and support the people who are coming into my office. So I think I just gave you a very long-winded answer to your question.
You did, but I'm so fascinated by it because you started out by saying that you didn't think that you were a good caregiver or that this was going to be a good role for you, but you
Yeah.
dove into it. I guess you had to embrace it because there weren't a lot of other options. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I have a thought about that, if I may.
yeah.
Uh, so one of the beautiful things, like everybody has their stories about the things that worked for them well and didn't work for them well during COVID. One of the things that worked very well for me is that I found a group of people who meet online every day at 7 a.m. and do a half an hour meditation together, and it starts with one person reading something or sharing a provocative thought.
Mhm.
And then for half an hour, we sit and then we say bye-bye. And I did that all through COVID, and it was really helpful. Um, I sat again recently. I've started sitting with them again. And a couple of days ago, the conversation was about acceptance, and that acceptance leads to clarity, which leads to understanding. And so I thought about acceptance and how that plays into the life of a dementia family caregiver. I remembered that way back when I was nursing my first child, and I would wake up in the middle of the night. He's like 2, 3 weeks old, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night over and over and over again. And I'd go into my little rocking chair and I'd sit there and I'd hold him. And I remember this one night where I could feel like anger because I thought, God, I can't believe you're still waking me up every night, like every 2 hours I'm waking up. And I was just so mad. And all of a sudden it just sort of like dawned on me that like, oh, wait, what if instead I just accepted this as what I have? I mean, because I'm not going to change this.
Right.
So what if I accepted this and instead looked at it as an opportunity to be like, wow, I am giving life to this beautiful little creature. And I have this rare opportunity because it's going to be fleeting. I have this rare opportunity to be with this person fully and be really, really present with them. And so I'm grateful for that gift of that thought of acceptance that occurred to me at that time. And I think that that's one of the things that really carried me as a caregiver. So I did not know much about how to be a caregiver,
Hmm.
but what I did understand was the importance of being able to be present with something and just say, you know what, so this is what we got. And how are we going to be with this in the best way possible? Which is not is not at all to say that, and therefore you now get the idea that I am in fact a saint and I get everything right all the time. No, no, no. I had plenty of opportunities where I blew it in a very, very big way. But I think that for the most part, it was that ability to be able to say like, okay, so how do we just do the best that we can with this thing? And that is that curiosity, I think, is what really helps caregivers get through the acceptance, but also curiosity about, okay, so that didn't work very well. What should I do differently next time? Whoa, wow, what made him do or say the thing that he just did or say? Like, what happened just before the moment when things got ugly? That constant curiosity about, is there something that I can do about that? And the recognition also that nobody with dementia is trying to be difficult, right?
Right, correct. Yes.
Right? They're
And
just
in
being themselves.
right, and you have to be present in that moment with them to truly understand what's going on. I liked how I'm curious about this because I've heard this from other caregivers how they felt that there were times where they really messed something up.
Yeah, because you do. I mean, you can't not, right? Because you have I just watched again yesterday the for anybody who has not watched Kitty Norton's movie Wine, Women, and Dementia. It's a great film, and I don't just say that because I'm part of the talent, but I am in that film. But I watched it again yesterday because there was a showing at a care community, at an independent living community here, and in that film, one of the other people, Roseanne Corcoran, talks about the fact that when she had not had any sleep, that she was more likely to snap at her mom. And I thought, oh yeah, I remember that. Like when I've had no sleep, or when like the kids are falling apart, because it's different when you have little kids, right? And you're dealing with
Yeah.
dementia. The kids are having a hard day. The dog just threw up on the carpet, and now my husband has come in and like done something that if I were in a better state of mind, I would be able to be like, well, let's go ahead and clean that up. But instead, I'm like, what are you doing? Why did you? Right. And it's like, not all of us are skilled all of the time. And I think that as caregivers, we need to just be so graceful with ourselves and so generous with ourselves to be able to say, like, yup, and that happened too.
And that you are going to have an outburst, and that doesn't make you less of a caregiver. It just makes you a real person.
I agree with you completely, Holly. Well said.
Did you find that when you started going through this, that there weren't enough resources for you and that you almost had to create your own?
Yes. There were certain kinds of resources available, and there were certain kinds of resources that weren't available. So the kinds of resources that were plentiful were things to read online, videos to watch, education. I could find those kinds of things. What there was not enough of was information about how do you spend your days? What do you do with a person who is nonverbal? What can you do to occupy a person who is not able to pay much attention to the world or to get a lot out of the world? Like, how do you try to give them the best day-to-day experience possible? How do you occupy them in ways that give you moments of respite? Because every caregiver knows that the thing that we crave more than anything is a few minutes to ourselves to just like decompress, to breathe, to get out for, to peel a carrot, whatever it is that we want to do. And so that is one of the things that led me to creating Zinnia, was looking for a tool that I didn't have.
So tell me a little bit more about that. It started out as you making videos as a way to connect with your husband, right?
It did. So when I would visit my husband, once he moved to long-term care, when I would visit him, I had the experience that many caregivers do, or visiting family members do, which is like, what do you talk about, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And so it quickly becomes very transactional. Well, I went to the grocery store today. You wouldn't believe the price of beans, right? Or whatever. You're just talking about things that mean absolutely nothing to the person that you're talking to because you feel like you need to sort of fill the void a bit, when maybe sometimes the best thing to do is just simply hold their hand. But still, you want to have conversation. And when they can't have a conversation back, you run out of interesting things to talk about. So I would bring magazines, I'd bring pictures. I found that if we were able to focus on the same visual thing, that we could then have something that seemed like more of a conversation about it, even if it was looking at a magazine and you have a picture of a beautiful woman, talking about, wow, she's looking great in that dress, whatever it is, right?
Right.
And so certainly, right, on my phone and on my iPad, I could bring up photos of myself and the kids and Evan, of vacations that we had taken. And so that is something that we could talk about. And I know that people will bring photo albums. Those are great conversation starters. But even then, you're only talking about the things that you have access to on your phone. And so, or in the magazines. I started then using my Apple devices to make little videos, which is very easy to do. I can go into my pictures. I can create a little video with the search word dogs. And so it will comb through my photos and put together a little slideshow of all of the images of dogs set to music. And we can just sit and we watch that together. So I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Like those are sort of captivating. And it's certainly far better than what I see you watching on TV when I show up and you're parked in his wheelchair in front of a television watching things that are completely inaccessible for him. I'm going to pause there for a second and share an experience that I had last month. I led a panel. I don't remember if I told you about that. I might have. I don't remember if we had already talked about this, Holly, but I led a panel at the Michigan Assisted Living Association. Did I tell you about that?
No.
Okay. So Michigan Assisted Living Association, I led a panel, and the panel was called Low Tech and No Tech Solutions for People Who Are Living with Dementia. And the panelists all had dementia. They were from all people who were part of the National Council for Dementia Minds, which is an organization that I love, 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 love. Anyway, I asked a question to the panelists: what do you like to watch on TV? And all but one person said, oh, I don't watch TV anymore. It's too much. I can't track the plot. I can't follow the characters. There's too much, like the noises that are happening and the talking and the visuals that are moving fast. I just get upset when I try to watch TV. And yet, how many care communities do you go into and people are parked in front of a TV? How many family homes, personal family homes, do you go to and the person with dementia is sitting on a sofa with the TV playing because the family caregiver feels like, well, at least I'm doing something to engage them? People with dementia say that they can't watch TV. And one of the things that led me to create Zinnia was research that had shown that people with dementia are not necessarily able to track a plot or tell fact from fiction or process rapidly moving audio and video. So there was a research study that was done, and the title of the paper was Television Viewing and People Living in Long-Term Care Living with Dementia, or People with Dementia Living in Long-Term Care. Anyway, what they did in the research for that paper is they showed television shows to a bunch of people living with dementia to try and assess what was most understandable for them, most digestible. They showed them I Love Lucy. They showed them Bob Ross doing his paintings. They showed them Jerry Springer. And they showed them something called Venice. And Venice was simply screenshots of Venice with beautiful music.
Okay.
And that was the most digestible. And so I thought, well, gosh, that's what I'm doing with my song. I'm making little videos that are like Venice, but instead it's my dog or my kids or our vacation to Maine or wherever it might be. And so taking all of this stuff together, I thought, well, wait a minute. You should be able then to create videos that are something that is understandable by people with dementia, but I can't do it on my phone because I only have pictures of my family and pictures of our vacations.
Right.
So that's when I reached out to some friends who were at Apple, and I said, I need to talk to whoever created this program I'm using on my phone because I need to figure out, like, how do I get more content? Can I get like pictures of like a bunch of pictures of skiing and put them on my phone, or a bunch of pictures of whitewater rafting, because these are things my husband loves. And then I can make little videos. So the guy I wound up having a conversation with had recently left Apple, and he was the designer of the product that I was using.
Yay.
And so I told him how I was using it, and he was like, oh my gosh, that is a use case that we never thought of, that these videos that you can create on your phone actually are, the nature of them is that they are more accessible for somebody who requires a slower, gentler viewing experience. And this guy, frankly, lived in Vancouver, BC. I live in Seattle, Washington. And so I drove up to Vancouver. I'm like, I'm on my way. So I drove up to Vancouver. We met. He brought in this amazing artist, Berenice Freedom, who became our content person. We added another brilliant person, Bill Yanowski, who is our business development guy. He's our CEO. And but he had this wonderful background in business development. We all had people we knew who had dementia. So we were like, let's do this thing. And so that was the genesis of what has become Zinnia, which is much more than just slow TV, but that's the genesis of it.
Yeah, and I can really appreciate that because in just how you said, it seems like anyone that you know or anyone that's in my world right now, I feel is either touched by someone with dementia. They have experience with it. I've, had recent experience with my own mom and my father-in-law. And you're right about you run out of things, you run out of things to say to them, and
Yeah.
but you still want to engage with them, and you want them to be able to engage with you, even if it's just for small moments of time, because sometimes that's all you get.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And you want those moments to be meaningful.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Did you find that your husband Evan, it needed to be things that he was already familiar with, or was it just the style of the videos that he found engaging?
That's a great question. So Evan never got to see Zinnia. He passed away
Okay.
before Zinnia, pardon me, made its way into the world. Sorry. So, but here's what I know. So there are a few main ways or reasons why people use Zinnia. So with Zinnia, we consider, and I am going to answer your question, we consider that the TV is simply the box through which we deliver the tool, and the tool is Zinnia. So what does Zinnia videos do? Well, if you are a person who had been who liked to sew, or who liked to bake, or who liked fishing, or who liked skiing, or who liked to play basketball or watch football, we have Zinnia videos for all of those and many, 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 many other topics. The idea being that if I am sitting down in my dad's long-term care community or at home with my dad, and I know that he was a mad gardener, I can put on a video about gardening, a Zinnia video about gardening, and it gives him something to really lock into because he was a big gardener. And so if he's able to communicate, I would ask him questions as we're watching it, like, wow, are those peas that they're growing? What are they doing to the soil there, Dad? Those seeds look very small. What kind of seeds do you think those are? Right? So it generates opportunities for us to talk and connect around something that was meaningful to that person or has been meaningful to them. That said, I remember that one of our early testers was a fellow whose wife was an artist. And so the woman with dementia was an artist. And so we created a bunch of art videos about colors, people making art, about completed art projects and paintings. And our expectation was that she would lock onto those and, oh boy, this would really make Frances happy. But her husband, he was like, okay, so the video that she wants to watch over and over and over again is the U.S. Navy. And we're like, what? So does she have somebody in her family who was in the Navy? And he said, no. He said, she's a complete pacifist. We have nobody in our family who has ever been in the military. And yet she's crazy about the Navy video. So it's hard to say what somebody will
Okay.
find interesting. And so the beauty of Zinnia is that there are many, 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 many videos. So you can try different things out. We've done a lot of research. I'm really, really proud of the research that we've been able to do, both in long-term care and family settings, looking at how Zinnia helps people. And so one of the main use cases is this ability to connect and have conversations with the person who's living with dementia. But what we also know is that if the person with dementia is engaged enough, that I might be able to get up and go peel that carrot. And I might be able to go upstairs and throw in a load of wash or whatever it might be. So because things are moving at a speed that is completely consumable by the person with dementia. But because we're also able to create something that is so evocative, right, that is really pulls a person in, one of the other things that has come out in our research is the ability of Zinnia videos to soothe somebody who's in a state of agitation. So whether it's that there's a lady in long-term care who used to be a pediatric nurse, this is a story that the long-term care person shared with me, right? The lady who's gets into a state every day. She starts to get upset, not knowing where she's supposed to be. What am I supposed to be doing next? And the doctor's orders are give her a dose of an antipsychotic, which is just a horrible thing to do to a person over and over and over again. And what they discovered is, you know what? If we just show her the baby's video, it completely brings her down, and we don't need to give her the antipsychotic. So we are actually waiting for the results now in a follow-on study that was just done at the Brenda Strafford Research Institute in Canada, where they're specifically looking at Zinnia as a tool to reduce use of antipsychotics, to reduce emergency room trips, and to reduce inter-resident aggression in long-term care communities. So if you know that there's something that's generally quite soothing, for the family caregiver, that becomes soothing.
Yeah.
So there's a guy, Arnie. Hey, Arnie Cohen. Arnie Cohen's an amazing guy, family caregiver. He lives in California. And he shared with me that one of the things that he loved was that his wife, Terry, had a couple of Zinnia videos that were specific, that were especially useful to help soothe her when she was getting upset. And he said, so now, he said, I used to live like in fear of when is Terry going to have an episode? When is she going to react to something in a way that is hard for me to manage? And so, you know, it's kind of a background stress. And he said, but now I don't even think about it, because if she starts to get into that kind of a state, I just put on the whatever video, and it almost always soothes her. And he's like, so I feel like I've got this sort of like tool in my back pocket that I can like whip out and solve the problem. And knowing that I have that tool has reduced my own stress.
That's that's a really, it's a really beautiful story. And I'm just going to share something with you real quick, because my mom was in a care facility, and it was at the height of COVID. So we really didn't have a lot of ability to spend time with her. And she had, I think they refer to it as the sundowners, where she would get very agitated at that part of the day. And that is what landed her in the hospital at the end of her life, because they over-medicated her. And if there were other solutions, if someone had known her a little bit better, if they were able to soothe her in another way, I don't know. I don't know where we'd be.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Oh, thank you. But that's why I just find your work so very important, because there has to be a better option than medication.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. And there are, right? You know, we know that music does beautiful things.
Yes.
There's been a lot of research about how music helps soothe people who are living with dementia. And I hope that there will be more aside from the research that we're working with researchers to look at the impact of visual inputs as opposed to audio inputs to
Yeah.
help bring ease. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really it is really hard, but I've had several conversations recently with a caregiving expert, and her name is Pamela Wilson, and she often talks about the gaps in our systems and how so many women who are caregiving feel alone and isolated,
Yeah.
and you lived with this yourself. What do you think we're getting wrong when it comes to supporting caregivers?
Well, um, isolation, I mean, is huge, is a huge problem. And I think that for a lot of caregivers, well, first of all, we know that more people who have dementia are women, and also more people who are dementia caregivers are women.
Hmm.
So you can argue that it's more of a female problem, but it's a male problem too. I mean, it's a caregiver problem that people feel isolated. And what I see happen is that people feel like there's nothing that can help me because I'm just stuck with him or her, and this is just the way it's going to be until it's over. I have met so many caregivers who, for instance, don't want to let their children know just how hard it is to be with dad all day because they feel like, you know what, I don't want to burden my children. I'm just going to put on a happy face and say, oh no, dad's fine. I'm doing fine. And so there's this reluctance to let people know just how hard it is. So I think that caregivers often create the problem by not being willing to accept help. So that's something we have to really look at. Like, okay, so if I'm not going to bother my adult kids, who am I going to tell? Or like my sweetheart who lost his wife to Alzheimer's disease, right? We met in our caregiver support group. Yet another reason to go to a caregiver support group. But we met in our caregiver support group. And he had promised his wife that he would not tell anybody that she had dementia. And so he was a
Oh,
perfect example of somebody who was absolutely isolated. Because he had promised that he wouldn't tell anybody, they didn't go out in public because it would be really obvious that there was something not right with her. So they didn't go out. They stopped socializing. They didn't have kids. They didn't have family who lived nearby. And so therefore they just lived this in misery for years. He eventually joined a support group, which as I said, is where I met him. And that became his lifeline because he felt like, well, I don't know, maybe it's not really a violation of my promise to her if I tell other people who are living with dementia.
right.
And so I think that it is so important for caregivers to be stigma busters. And I think it's an important conversation for people to have when they're healthy. Like, honey, if I get dementia, I want you to tell the world about how awesome it is that we are still living our lives despite the fact that I have dementia. And I'm going to do the same if you get dementia. I'm going to tell everybody. I think that one of the things that I feel like I did well is that when my husband had dementia, it never occurred to me to not tell people. Because I recognized, like, okay, I kind of think that people need to know what's going on with us because for years I thought my husband was just a jerk, right? I mean, he was like
Oh,
getting right, and so did other people, right? There are plenty of people,
right.
right? He got fired from 2 jobs because he was incompetent. He had been a brilliant rock star software engineer, and yet he got fired from 2 jobs for being incompetent. And so I thought, okay, you people who fired him, you need to know that he had dementia. Like there was a reason. He's an amazing guy who happened to get dementia. And so I sent an email to everybody in our world. And in that email, I explained what was going on. I explained why he was behaving the way that he had been behaving for the past few years. And I also said that I have been told, because I had talked to my doctor about this, that we will probably need some help. And so if there are people out there who have not seen us in a while, who would like to spend some time with Evan, we could really use that because I could see our world getting smaller. And oh my gosh, Holly, what was so amazing to me is that on one hand, the people who I thought would be our rocks were not necessarily. The people who I in a million years would never have expected to be there for us were there. And so by broadening that reach of letting people know what's going on and that you're going to need some help, I couldn't believe the outliers from our social circle, people who I hardly knew, but they were on my email list, who were like, how about if I take him to the gym every Thursday? How about if I take him out to lunch every Friday? What? Oh my gosh. So I'm giving you a very long-winded answer to your question, but I think that as caregivers, we need to take it on ourselves to let the world know what's going on, to ask for help, right? My mom watched that movie, the Wine, Women, and Dementia movie, in which I told you that I'm in. And in that movie, I'm talking about how hard it is to be a caregiver. My mom watched that movie recently, and she called me up and she said, okay, I've just stopped crying.
Oh.
Why didn't you tell us how hard it was? And I said, because I don't know. I mean, I didn't want to seem weak. I wanted to seem like I got this.
Mm-hmm.
You live in, you don't fly anymore. You live on the East Coast. I knew you couldn't come out and help me, and I didn't want to worry you. And
Yes.
and like with Evan's mother, she was convinced until the day she died that he was getting better, because that's what she needed to believe. So that's the myth, right? That I shared with her. Like, oh my God, he's getting so much better. So she wasn't available to help. But I had a support group, and I had friends. I had these outliers, and then also make yourself aware of what's available in your region. Reach out to your area agency on aging. Every county has an area agency on aging, or sometimes they're grouped together, multiple counties. But you can find out whether there are programs in your state. There are more and more dementia. Coffee, what is it called? Coffee, dementia. Do you know what I'm talking about? They meet
No.
in coffee shops. Sorry, memory cafes. Thank
Oh,
you.
okay.
More and more memory cafes. Here in Seattle, I always tell people, like, if you're going to get dementia, like, do it in Seattle, because there are a lot of programs here. But anyway, I digress. I just think that it's on the caregiver to look for resources and to also tell yourself, I'm going to get through this, and I'm going to get through this because I'm going to take care of myself. So Kitty, the one who made the movie that I was just talking about, she talks about how her dad, like, they didn't think they had anything to worry about because dad was going to take care of mom. Well, dad died of pancreatic cancer. And by the time he found out he had pancreatic cancer, he had 3 weeks to live.
Oh, wow.
And it's because he had completely neglected his own health. Because who's going to watch her while he goes to the doctor, right? He can't take her with him. Well, find somebody to watch them, right? You have got to take care of your own health as a caregiver. It's an imperative. Look at what happened. My God, that horrible situation with Gene Hackman, right?
Oh, I know. That was
partner
so
died,
sad.
right? That was so sad. And we only know about it because it was Gene Hackman. They're not the only ones who that happens to.
No.
Right? It happens that something happens to the caregiver because they have completely depleted themselves. They're not taking care of themselves. They get sick. And now who's going to watch the person with dementia? So as caregivers, if you really care about the person you're caring for, you need to stay healthy for
Take care of
them.
yourself.
If for no other reason, you've got to take care of yourself.
Yes. And, I've heard that many, many times. And I think the caregiver at first feels selfish, but when you hear stories like that, you realize that if you are the only person, or you feel you're the only person that can take care of whomever it is you're caring for, then you have to be healthy and you have to be rested and you have to fill your cup.
Well said, Holly. I agree completely.
Just, one more question, because you talked about how you let people know. Was it hard at first when they'd offer to do things with your husband, take him to the gym or take him for lunch? Was it hard at first to accept that help?
No. And I surprised myself by accepting that help, right? It felt a little selfish in some ways, but here's the thing. I just had this conversation recently with somebody. I was talking about the fact that when I do something that's a kindness for another person, it feels really good to me. Like, I feel really good when I was on the bus recently, and there was a homeless person who got on the bus, and she was obviously really agitated. She was having a hard time getting her stuff together in it. And so I moved over and sat next to her, and I said, "You're having a really hard day." And she said, "I am having a really hard day." And we talked the whole bus ride. She got off the bus, and somebody came up to me, and they were like, "Wow, that was so nice of you." And I thought, I I mean, okay, it was good for her, but it was good for me. Like, I feel really good if I know that I've helped another person. And I think that that's by design, right? I think it's sort of, sorry, this is a little off topic, but I thought, oh, it's like having an orgasm. Like, oh, that makes us want to have sex, which means that we want to have babies, right? I mean, I think it's built in
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sex feels good. I think it's built in that helping other people feels good. And so I think that when we create opportunities and we invite other people in very personal ways to be helpful, we're giving them an opportunity to, as you said, fill their own cup, that they feel better because they are actively helping an entire family by this half hour that they spent at the gym with this guy. They gave their wife like years of life, right? By
Right?
doing
And
that.
it's so simple.
It is so simple. And so, and granted, at the time, this is me on reflection, right? At the time, I didn't think like, oh, this must feel really good to Don that he's taking Evan to the gym. I'm glad that we're able to give him this opportunity to feel good about himself. No, no, no. I thought, thank God, I get to
Right?
go for a
Yes.
walk, right? And so I recognized that these little bits of respite that I was getting through the kindness of others were gold. I mean, my gosh, they were treasure to me to have these little bits of time. So it wasn't hard for me in any way to accept that help.
Sometimes though, you find people who are maybe very private and I'm sure now that you're so involved with memory loss and people suffering with it, that you see this happening and they're not asking for the help or they're not opening up. Have you found that there are little things that the people around them could do that either make them feel a little bit more comfortable with accepting help or that you could just do sort of behind the scenes?
That's really a thoughtful question to ask because I think that a lot of people are like, I don't know, like I don't know how to be with a person with dementia. Like I'd offer to take George, but like, what do I do with George? So I think that if there are people who are, for instance, here with us today, right, who are listening, who think like, okay, yeah, like I know this family down the street, and I like the wife obviously is like the guy. There's something going on with the guy. I don't know what to do. Well, you could knock on the door and bring food, right? You could bring food so that that's one less meal that the wife or the husband, whomever it is, needs to prepare. You could knock on the door and say, I was about to go for a walk, and I noticed that I see you walking with your husband all the time. I wonder if he would walk with me. Maybe I could take a little walk with him. For people who are nervous about being with a person with dementia, because this did happen too. I mean, admittedly, there were people who were like, I'd hang out with Evan, but he's so much bigger than I am, and I know that people with dementia get violent, and I don't know how I would do, because that's what we learn. Like that's what we hear is that people with dementia. I've talked to dementia caregivers who are like, well, he hasn't gotten violent yet. He probably never will. Right? Many people
Right.
get violent. But I think that it's a good idea for people to educate themselves. So if you're going to spend time with a person who's living with dementia, there are so many videos. If you look at Keep Us Snow's YouTube channel or your YouTube channel or Dementia Care Blazer, Natalie Edwards, her caregiver, her channel, right? We have dementia education on Zinnia. I mean, there are opportunities for people to educate themselves about how to be with people who have dementia. Did I answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, you did. But before we go, I do want you to tell people where they could find Zinnia TV and how they could use it, because I think just knowing that you have one more tool at your disposal could be so important.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, Zinnia TV. So we have a website and it's zinniatv.com. I will spell that ZINNIATV.com. And it's called Zinnia because I am a big gardener. And zinnias are one of my favorite flowers. And one of the things that I love about them is that they thrive even when conditions are not the best. So when I met this guy from Apple and we came together as a group, I was calling it Zinnia TV, thinking that would just be like a placeholder. Later on, we'll actually find a name for the product, but we just sort of all got stuck with Zinnia TV, so we've stuck with it. So right on our website, you can sign up. It's not very expensive, Holly. It's $70 a year for a subscription, or you can do a monthly thing, which is $9.99. So it's more expensive monthly, but $70 a year. And there's a free 2-week trial. So you can sign up. You do have to put a credit card in, but the credit card doesn't get charged if you cancel within 2 weeks. So you can try it, try it out. We also have free videos on our website. Like it says watch, I forget exactly what it says, but check us out. So
Right.
you can sign up for a free trial. You can watch free videos. You can see if they help. It's an app that is downloadable for on a TV. So it's like Apple TV, Android TV, Samsung ties in. Most people use Roku to watch it.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Well, I want to say thank you so much for what you're doing, for what you can offer caregivers and even people who find themselves in long-term care facilities. It's so necessary. And again, I just wanted to thank you for being here today and for sharing your story and for not giving up.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And thanks for this opportunity to just hopefully maybe educate a few people about things that they could do to take better care of themselves. Just remember, you're not alone. You're not alone.
No,
Oh,
no,
I'm going to
you're
give
not.
I do also want to say that we are starting a new thing. The first one's going to be June 27th at 10 a.m. I'm going to be sending out media about it. But anyway, we're calling it a superhero support series. And we're going to be doing monthly support sessions online where each month I'll have a different person who's sort of a superhero in the dementia care world. So the first person who's going to be joining me is Carrie Alberts, who's the dementia darling. She's an amazing educator. And so we're going to do monthly sessions where we bring in different dementia experts. And we have a 15, 20-minute didactic, a lesson about some aspect of how do you care for a person living with dementia, followed by an hour of Q&A. So that will be happening monthly. And I don't
And
know.
is that on the website?
I should put it on my website. It's not on the website.
Okay.
We're about to just sort of start advertising about it now. I'll figure out a way to put it on the website. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And if you want to send over a link or something like that you'd like me to include and for the audience to be able to find, let me know.
That would be great. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on Real Wisdom. If you're inspired by stories like this and want to be part of a community that celebrates the wisdom of women, visit joinempart.com and become a part of our conversation. And don't forget to subscribe for more Real Wisdom. Until next time, keep embracing your story.